So this is something where I really encourage you, if you think about it and you have the tendency to say, okay, I only know I've done a good job if someone else is telling me that, then there are ways to work with a coach or with a psychotherapist. And it's literally enhancing your self confidence, enhancing also your self worth, and finding this trust in yourself that whenever you feel you've done something right, then it actually is right.
Hi, and welcome to Lead Well.
Hi, and welcome to this new podcast episode. Today, I want to cover with you something that I run into in quite a few conversations that I have, not only with my coaches, but also with friends. And that is the fact that people are not the same. They don't have the same likes, they don't have the same approach, they don't have the same characteristics, not the same way of making decisions. You will tell me, Christine, well, that is common sense. And it turns out it's not so common. And what I have identified is that, especially for people who have not experienced the fact to be different, people who are normal, they sometimes have a harder time to actually remember or to actually even be aware that other people might have different ways of doing things. Now, let me share some of those that I have come across, and I have come across those pairs when I was in my NLP training. I think I talked about that before, that this is something that really opened my eyes as well, because yes, I mean, I thought everyone does things the same as I do. And it turns out, no, it's not the case at all. And I will share with you also what is the impact of having a different point of view when you're having a conversation, when you want to convince someone, when you want to help someone through change, when you want to get buy in from someone. And so, what is the effect of that? Now, the first pair, I always will present it to you in pairs. The first pair is probably very, very well known to you. That is introvert versus extrovert, or as the original terminology was, extrovert, because it comes from being oriented on the outside, extra, versus being oriented towards the inside. And I think I don't have to give you a lot of explanation of what that is. I saw a really funny picture lately that gave a good visual description of what it looks like to be a real introvert versus to be a real extrovert. So a real introvert would look at their own shoes, and an extrovert would probably look at the shoes of the other person, maybe not even the shoes, but the face. And talking about me, by now, what would you say I am? I would describe myself as an extrovert in disguise, or actually an introvert in disguise. So I have learned to talk to other people, to be with other people. I actually love being in a group of people of 4 to 6. Anything above that becomes a bit difficult for me and becomes a bit hard for me. I need to really invest in having interactions with more than probably 4 to 6 people. And what I always need, if I spend time with others, and that can also be one other person, a friend of mine, even my husband, I need some time in the evening for myself to be on my own so that I can recover and that I can replenish my energy, my batteries. And this is one of the main differences. So an extrovert would get their energy from being with others, and an introvert would get their energy from being on their own. So don't think that if you have someone who is really good at making connections, who is really good at reaching out to others, that makes them an extrovert. Ask them in the evening, what do you prefer to do? Do you prefer to spend time on your own, or do you prefer to actually spend time with others? And is that the fact that gives you energy? That's also the question that you can ask yourself, because it's very important to understand what type of characteristics we have, what kind of person we are. Because if I would think that I'm an extrovert, I would actually, yeah, be very, very tired after a weekend, for example, in a social environment. I do need my hours off so that I can recover and I can actually spend some time with myself. So, curious to hear what it is for you and how it is with you. Now, there is another pair that I want to cover that sounds very, very similar, and it is called being internal versus external. So, introvert, extrovert, and now internal versus external. And usually, with those characteristics, I always say it's not good or bad. So, you can either be an introvert or an extrovert. Everything is great. You just have to understand who you are so that you understand where to get your energy back and how to interact with others that serves you in the best possible way. With internal and external, I do have a tendency to say that if you are really external, it has a lot of advantages to work towards being more internal. Now, let me share what I mean by that. An internal person, if you ask an internal person, or if you ask anyone, let's start that way. If you ask anyone, how do you know that you have delivered good results or good work? There are two types of answers. And I do that on a regular basis when I talk to my coachees. There are those that say, well, actually, if I have done good job, I know that and I don't need the confirmation. Yeah, it's nice if my manager gives me feedback and says that I've done a good job, but hey, at the end of the day, I'm happy with it. And if I'm not happy, it doesn't help if he tells me that I did well. And then there are others. When I ask them what makes you understand, what makes you confident that you have done a great job, they say, it's when I get that feedback from my manager, when my colleagues tell me that I've done a good job, when they tell me that the project was great. They do seek the confirmation from the outside. And again, it's not good nor bad. It's a tendency that we have. So some of it is innate. So some of it is in your structure, in your characteristics. But that's something that you can work towards, because being confident of your own job, of your own results really helps, because otherwise you're always dependent on the feedback of others. You're always dependent on those that tell you how good you are. And by the way, for a manager, it's not that nice either to always have to tell an employee, well, yes, you've done a good job. Yeah, great job there. Wonderful, you've done this. It can be tiring for the manager as well, for the leader as well. So this is something where I really encourage you, if you think about it and you have the tendency to say, okay, I only know I've done a good job if someone else is telling me that, then there are ways to work with a coach or with a psychotherapist. And it's literally enhancing your self confidence, enhancing also your self worth, and finding this trust in yourself that whenever you feel you've done something right, then it actually is right. Now, there is another one that I want to share with you this week, and that is structured versus optional. or procedural versus what people will probably call chaotic. Now, how can I find out what I am? Because usually when I am a very structured person would think, well, that's normal and everyone else is just chaotic. Everyone else is just kind of living in a mess. And a very optional person would think, well, the way I live provides me freedom and everything else is putting me in a box and putting me in a reigned environment that I don't want to be in. So to find out how do you think is one question you can ask yourself, and one question I ask my coaches when we're going in that direction is, when you make a list of things that you want to do in your head, how does this list look like? And how are you actually working on that list? And once you have asked that question, you can even see them do this if they are very structured. And then when you ask them, they say, well, yeah, I start with number 1 and then I go to 2 and maybe I jump back to, maybe I go through because I feel this one is more important than that one, but they have the structure there. People who have a different way of thinking, a different way of coming up with ideas and organizing them, it could be that their ideas floating around in a cloud-like form. So for me, things that I want to do, I have them everywhere and they are even moving. And sometimes when I need to make sure that I want to do something, I have to put a sticker on it, or I have to put almost like a nail to it so that I have it there and I know I will work on this. Again, those with an optional mind, yes, we can work towards having a structured approach. And funnily enough, whenever I need to get something done, I need to write it down on paper. Doesn't help to have it electronically. If I need to get something done, I need to have it on paper. And then I can check it off and it will get done. As long as it's in my cloud, I will not forget it, but it's not guaranteed that I will work on it very soon. And people who are very structured, they're getting crazy if they have to work and or live with a person who is optionally oriented, because they need their structure. And I once had a coachee where he had a coworker who had a very structured approach, and he wanted to create a very creative environment, a very innovative environment with not a lot of boxes, not a lot of constraints. And he wondered why this colleague, this structured colleague, got lost to a point where that colleague wanted to leave. And now by working together, what he figured out is that by showing this colleague that there is a structure, even within the seeming chaos, and by also providing him a job, him tasks where he could go in a structured way, where he could probably set up processes. These people are fantastic for setting up processes. If you have a structured person, because they will know exactly what are the steps and they will set the steps and follow the steps. And so this is why if I feel it's so important to understand what type of person I am talking to, because then I know what type of job, what type of task this person would want to do and would feel happy with. And so this is why I think having an idea of, again, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, an internal or an external person, or a structured versus optional one, or have a structured versus an optional approach, is really helpful, not only for yourself, but also when you compare yourself to others. Usually those that we can definitely not work with, usually they are just different in some areas. And next week we will cover some more of these areas that make us different, that sometimes make it's harder for us to work together. But as soon as we recognize it, we can pay attention to it, we can take it into account, and it makes life so much easier, especially when you're working with people, when you're managing people, because then you can actually put them in a position, put them in a role, and making sure that in their role, they can live with their characteristics there. So for this week, this was it already. I look forward to speaking to you again next week. Bye bye. May you always lead well, yourself and others.
This was Lead Well. Now, what is the one thing that you're taking away from this episode? Please share in the comments below and do share the podcast with your friends and family, but only if you like it.